When you're 34 and the doctor says stage 3 breast cancer, your world stops spinning. When you're 34, recently widowed, and your in-laws who own a multi-million-dollar restaurant chain say they can't help with treatment costs because money is tight, your world doesn't just stop, it shatters. I'm Grace Chen-Martinez, and 6 months ago, my life was different. My husband Carlos and I had been living our dream in San Francisco, where he managed the tech side of his family's restaurant empire, Martinez Restaurant Group, while I worked as a financial analyst for a venture capital firm. We'd been high school sweethearts who'd beaten the odds, growing up together in the same working-class neighborhood before putting ourselves through college on scholarships. Carlos always joked that between his family's culinary genius and my financial acumen, we were unstoppable. "You watch the numbers, my amor," he'd say, "and I'll make sure we never go hungry." His parents, Miguel and Elena Martinez, had built their business from a single food truck to a chain of 30 high-end Mexican fusion restaurants across California. They were living proof of the American dream. But dreams have a way of turning into nightmares. It started with Carlos' accident. A drunk driver, a rainy night, and suddenly I was a widow at 33. The Martinez family rallied around me initially, Elena bringing food every day, Miguel handling the funeral arrangements, Carlos's sister Isabella checking on me regularly. They insisted I keep my position managing some of the family's investment accounts, saying I was still part of the family. "Carlos would want us to take care of you," Elena had said at the funeral, hugging me tightly. I believed her then. A year passed. I threw myself into work, both at my day job and managing the Martinez family's personal investments. Carlos and I had always lived modestly despite our comfortable income, investing heavily in tech startups and renewable energy. Our personal portfolio was doing well, but I kept that information private, respecting Carlos' wish to make our own way without relying on his family's wealth. Then came the diagnosis. I found the lump during my morning shower. Within a week, I was sitting in Dr. Patterson's office, staring at scan results that showed the cancer had already spread to my lymph nodes. The treatment plan she outlined was aggressive and expensive. Even with insurance, you're looking at significant out-of-pocket costs. Dr. Patterson explained gently, "Do you have family who can help?" I thought of the Martinez family's restaurants, their vacation homes, Elena's designer wardrobe. "Yes," I said, "I have family." That evening, I invited Miguel and Elena over for dinner. Isabella came too, bringing her husband Robert and their teenage daughters. I prepared Carlos' favorite enchiladas using Elena's recipe, wanting to remind them of our connection. "I need to tell you something," I said after dinner, my hands clutching my water glass. "I've been diagnosed with breast cancer, stage 3. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena crossed herself, murmuring a prayer. Isabella gasped, reaching for my hand across the table. "The doctors are optimistic," I continued, trying to keep my voice steady. "But the treatment is expensive. Even with my insurance, I'm looking at nearly $200,000 in out-of-pocket costs." I was hoping the family might be able to help. Miguel and Elena exchanged glances. "Grace, Corrida," Elena began, her voice hesitant. "You know we think of you as family, but money is very tight right now." "The restaurants? We're expanding into new locations," Miguel cut in. "All our capital is tied up in the business. We simply can't spare that kind of money right now." I stared at Elena's Cartier watch, the same model she'd bought Isabella for Christmas last month. "I'm not asking for a gift," I said carefully. "I can sign a loan agreement." "It's not possible." Miguel's voice was firm. "We have to think of the family's future, the business." "I and family?" The words burst out before I could stop them. "Carlos was my husband. We were together for 15 years. And we will always care for you," Elena said soothingly. "But Carlos is gone, Mijita. And this kind of financial commitment, it's different now." Isabel looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Her daughters stared at their plates. The easy family atmosphere evaporated. After they left, I sat in Carlos' old office, surrounded by photos of happier times. Our wedding day, where Miguel had proudly called me his daughter. Family vacations where Elena had insisted on buying me matching outfits with Isabella. All those Sunday dinners where I'd learned their secret recipes, been treated like a true Martinez. But now, when I needed them most, I was just the widow they'd rather forget. The next few weeks were a blur of medical appointments and insurance paperwork. I took medical leave from my VC firm, grateful for the short-term disability coverage. My coworkers were surprisingly supportive, organizing meal trains and offering to drive me to appointments. The Martinez family, however, became increasingly distant. My calls about their investments went unreturned. Elena's daily check-ins stopped. Even Isabella's Christmas invitation came with a casual suggestion that maybe it would be too tiring for me to attend this year. I started my first round of chemotherapy alone. The side effects were brutal. Nausea that left me curled around the toilet for hours. Fatigue that made even lifting my head from the pillow feel impossible. Hair that came out in clumps until I finally buzzed it all off. Crying as I remembered how Carlos used to love running his fingers through it. Through it all, I kept working remotely, managing investments between bouts of sickness. The Martinez family's portfolio required attention, even if they were ignoring my existence. And that's when I noticed something odd. The restaurant group's financial reports showed aggressive expansion, but the numbers didn't add up. New locations were opening even as existing restaurants showed declining revenues. Loans were being taken out at increasingly unfavorable terms, and large sums were being transferred to offshore accounts under Miguel's personal control. "They're cooking the books," I whispered to my empty apartment, the irony of the phrase not lost on me. Further investigation revealed the truth. The Martinez Restaurant Group was on the verge of collapse. Miguel had been hiding losses, inflating revenues, and deceiving investors for years. The empire they'd built was a house of cards, and it was about to come crashing down. But that wasn't the worst of it. Buried in the financial records, I found something that made my blood run cold. 2 days before Carlos' accident, he had sent an email to the company's board of directors, requesting an emergency meeting to discuss serious financial irregularities. The meeting never happened. Instead, my husband died on a rainy road. His car's brake lines mysteriously failed. I sat in the dark, my body weak from chemo but my mind racing. The family's sudden distance, their refusal to help with my treatment, it wasn't about money at all. They were afraid. Afraid of what I might find in the accounts Carlos had asked me to manage. Afraid of what I might discover about the night their son died. That's when I made my decision. The Martinez family had chosen money over family loyalty twice now. First with Carlos, then with me. It was time they learned the true cost of that choice. I reached for my phone and dialed Linda Warner, the best forensic accountant in San Francisco. "Linda, it's Grace Chen-Martinez. I need your help with something. How much do you know about restaurant industry accounting?" The morning I decided to take down the Martinez empire, I was sitting in the oncology ward, watching chemotherapy drip into my veins. Linda Warner had just texted me the preliminary results of her investigation, and my hands shook as I read the message. "Grace, it's worse than we thought. The restaurant group has been laundering money for years, and those transfers to the Cayman Islands, they started the day after Carlos' accident." I closed my eyes, remembering Carlos the last morning. He'd been distracted, worried about something he wouldn't share. "Just some irregularities in the books, my amor," he'd said, kissing me goodbye. "Nothing for you to worry about." Those were the last words he ever spoke to me. My phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from Detective Sarah Martinez. No relation to my in-laws. At the SFPD's Financial Crimes Unit. "Found something interesting in the brake manufacturer's report. Can we meet?" 2 hours later, I sat in Detective Martinez's office, still wearing my hospital bracelet, reviewing photographs of Carlos' damaged car. "The brake lines didn't just fail," she explained, pointing to a close-up image. "They were deliberately damaged. Someone with mechanical knowledge knew exactly where to cut to make it look like normal wear and tear." "Robert," I whispered. Isabella's husband was the company's head mechanic, responsible for maintaining their fleet of delivery vehicles. He would know how. "We also found this," the detective slid across a paper. It was a bank statement showing a $500,000 transfer to Robert's personal account, dated 1 week after Carlos's death. Care to guess who authorized the transfer? Miguel. My father-in-law's signature was clear at the bottom of the form. Everything was starting to make horrible sense. I spent the next month gathering evidence while continuing my cancer treatments. The chemo was brutal, but rage is a powerful motivator. Every time I felt like giving up, I thought of Carlos, of his dedication to doing what was right, of how they had betrayed not just me, but his memory. Linda's investigation revealed the full scope of the fraud. The Martinez Restaurant Group had been laundering money for a Mexican drug cartel for the past 5 years. The rapid expansion wasn't about growth. It was about creating more channels to clean dirty money. Carlos must have discovered the truth and threatened to expose it. The pieces all fit. The timing of his accident, the family's sudden distance from me, their refusal to help with my medical bills. They were afraid I'd find exactly what I had found. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated me. While managing their investment accounts, I had quietly documented everything. Every suspicious transfer, every falsified report, every instance of tax evasion. More importantly, I had something they didn't know about: Carlos's personal records. My husband hadn't just discovered the money laundering. He'd been gathering evidence for months, storing it all on an encrypted cloud drive that only I could access. The password? The date we first met in high school. The final piece fell into place when Isabella's oldest daughter, Maria, came to visit me. She was 17, Carlos's goddaughter, and the only one in the family who still kept in touch. "Tia Grace," she said, twisting her hands nervously, "I need to tell you something. About the night Tio Carlos died." She had overheard an argument between her parents the night before the accident. Robert had been on the phone with Miguel, their voices angry and scared. "Carlos knows too much," she'd heard her father say. "He's going to ruin everything." The next morning, she'd seen her father working on Carlos' car in their garage. When she asked what he was doing, he'd snapped at her to mind her own business. "I didn't know," she sobbed. "I didn't know they were going to. That he would." I held her while she cried, my heart breaking for this child caught in her family's web of lies. "It's not your fault," I told her. "But now you can help make it right." The confrontation came sooner than I planned. The restaurant group's creditors were closing in, and Miguel had called an emergency family meeting to discuss restructuring options. I wasn't invited, of course, but I decided to attend anyway. They were all there in the company's main conference room: Miguel, Elena, Isabella, Robert, and the board members. Elena's perfectly maintained facade cracked when she saw me walk in, my bald head held high, dressed in one of Carlos' old business suits. "Grace," Miguel started, his voice sharp. "This is a private family meeting." "Yes," I cut him off. "It is. And we have a lot of family business to discuss." I nodded to Detective Martinez and her team, who entered behind me, starting with what really happened to Carlos. What followed was 2 hours of systematic destruction. I presented the evidence of money laundering, complete with transaction records and witness statements. Linda Warner walked them through the financial fraud. Detective Martinez laid out the evidence of Carlos's murder. Elena broke first. "We had no choice," she screamed, mascara running down her face. "The cartel would have killed us all if we didn't cooperate. Carlos was going to expose everything." "So you killed my son." A new voice rang out. Everyone turned to see Miguel's brother Antonio in the doorway. He'd been the original founder of the restaurant group before Miguel bought him out. "My nephew is dead because of your greed." The arrests were almost anticlimactic. Miguel and Robert were led away in handcuffs, Elena collapsed in hysterics, and Isabella sat in stunned silence as her world crumbled. Maria testified against her father, her voice shaking but determined to honor her Tio Carlos' memory. The aftermath was chaos. The restaurant group's legitimate assets were seized, the money laundering operation was exposed, and the cartel connections were severed. But from the ashes, something new emerged. Antonio approached me after the trials were over. "Carlos always said you were the smartest person he knew," he said. "How would you feel about helping me rebuild? The right way this time?" 1 year later, I stood in the kitchen of the newly reopened original Martinez restaurant. My cancer was in remission, the treatments paid for by Carlos' private investments, which had grown significantly under my management. The restaurant group was smaller now but honest, with Antonio and I running it together using Carlos' original vision of fresh, authentic food served with integrity. Elena and Miguel were serving long sentences for their roles in both the money laundering and Carlos' death. Robert had made a plea deal, admitting to tampering with the breaks. Isabella, who had been kept in the dark about most of it, was rebuilding her life with her daughters, learning to live with the truth about her husband. The new restaurant's walls were lined with photos, the original food truck, Antonio's first recipes, and in the center, a picture of Carlos and me on our wedding day. Below it, I placed his favorite quote: "La comida es amor." Food is love. Last week, Maria started working part-time in the kitchen, learning her uncle's recipes. She wants to go to culinary school to honor Carlos' memory by creating food that brings people together instead of tearing them apart. Sometimes during quiet moments, I touch my hair, now growing back in soft curls, and think about how different things might have been if the Martinez family had chosen love over money, truth over greed. But then I look at Maria chopping vegetables with Antonio, at the honest books I keep in Carlos' old office, at the customers enjoying meals made with integrity. And I know we've built something better from the ashes of betrayal. Carlos used to say that real family is built on trust, not blood. In losing the family I married into, I found a truer one, built on honesty, justice, and the love of good food shared with good people. Yesterday, I hung a new sign in the restaurant's entrance. It reads, "In memory of Carlos Martinez, who believed in doing the right thing, no matter the cost." Below it in smaller letters, "The truth, like good food, always comes out in the end."